Hey everyone, Noam here. In case you missed it, Unpacking Israeli History is coming to Chicago on June 8th for our first ever live show, and I am so thrilled to finally announce our very special guest, and it is Dr. Michael Oren, best-selling author, historian, and politician, and his book on the Six-Day War in 1967 was so important. It has inspired me, it has educated me. I have learned so much from it, and I'm so excited to talk to him about that book and about Israeli history in general. We will be unpacking some of the most pressing questions around Israeli history, around Israeli identity and the future together, on stage, live. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. I want to see you all there. Grab your tickets now with the link in the show notes, or just go straight to Ticketmaster.com. Just search Unpacking Israeli History. And if you use the discount code UIHCHI, you can get 20% off your tickets. I'll say it one more time. Use the coupon code UIHCHI. And if you're not in Chicago, don't you worry. We got you. We're visiting a few other cities this year, so stay tuned. Chicago, Yalla. Let's do this.
There's a lot that goes into what goes on a coin, and it tells you a lot about the people making it and what message they were trying to get across. So especially in more ancient times, like, coins were the form of mass media. From Unpacked, this is Jewish History Nerds, the podcast where we nerd out on awesome stories in Jewish history. I'm Jonathan Schwab.
And I'm Yael Steiner. And I'm very excited to learn something new today from you, Schwab.
We're going to talk about something new today, a different way of looking at history than we've done before, which I think is really interesting. I've been spending the last couple of weeks reading about coins, reading about the specific coins we're going to talk about today, which is the Roman Judea Capta series coins. But when we talk about coins, I had this great moment in doing all of this research of defamiliarization, like thinking about coins as objects that I've seen many, many times in my life and realizing how interesting they are and in some ways how strange.
I should connect you with this guy that I connected with on a dating app who got really into coins during COVID. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, like people who are into coins are really, really into coins.
And trains.
And I get it. Well, yes, that goes along with similar sorts of things, but I see why. It is a really rich, no pun intended, area where there's a lot you can learn from and think about. But coins are really fascinating. I think before we even get into these coins, just a couple observations in thinking about or talking about coins. It's very strange that coins basically have the same form that they have had for several thousand years. Like, the coins we will talk about today are remarkably similar to the way that, like, a coin that's in your pocket, or realistically probably not in your pocket, like, appears today, even though these coins are 2,000 years old.
It is fascinating that in terms of the convenience of currency, which, obviously a lot of people now use almost exclusively credit cards or Apple Pay or Venmo, much to my father's chagrin. He thinks we should always have a little bit of cash on us.
Yeah, but even the little bit of cash that you have is paper money. You're not carrying around coins. That was the second observation I was going to make in listening to this numismatist, which is a person who studies coins. I don't know if that was a word you knew. We can add it to our word list.
I had a friend in college whose mother is a numismatist.
Oh, nice. This numismatist, whose lecture I was listening to, pointed out that even though coins have changed very little in several thousand years, we are living in a time where this is probably the end of coins. They're really becoming collector's items more than something that we actually need to use on a daily basis, and projecting, not a year or two, but like several decades into the future, like, we're probably not going to be using coins.
You may have noticed that I just turned my head because there is a large gallon-sized Ziploc bag full of coins sitting next to me that I have been meaning to bring to a bank or a coin star for about 5 years.
Yeah.
But we'll never do that.
Yeah. And that's what this guy who studies coins for a living, that's what he said. If I buy something in cash and get change in coins, those coins sit in my pocket until the end of the day when I put them in a jar or a bag or something, or on my desk at home to eventually probably do nothing with.
To languish forever.
Right. And that's not how coins used to be used, certainly.
And I'm certain that given that we are talking about these Judea Capta coins, that they have not languished untouched, unmentioned, or unobserved for eternity.
So let's talk about the final, just general observation about coins, and then we can get into our main topic, which is that coins are a really, really valuable historical resource. Like, they tell us so much about history. We often talk about texts. We've talked about art. We've talked about, buildings, but we've actually really interesting to me that we've never talked really about coins before because they can tell us so much about history. They're made of metal generally, so they preserve really well. So we have lots of them. They're valuable inherently most of the time. People aren't throwing coins in the garbage.
And most of the time, unlike many other things, my understanding is that coins appreciate in value. They either maintain or appreciate their value. Like, I've never heard of a penny depreciating. It's still worth 1 cent to my knowledge, even though I understand it costs more than 1 cent to mint. Totally different topic. But as you said, we have these rare coins that people collect that appreciate tremendously in value.
Right. And one of the reasons, I think, behind that appreciation, there's the rarity, but there's also, because coins are very deliberately made with a specific agenda. And, we don't really often think about this, but there's a lot that goes into what goes on a coin. And it tells you a lot about the people making it and what message they were trying to get across. So especially in more ancient times, like, coins were the form of mass media, like in the time period we're talking about.
They changed hands more than anything else, I'm assuming.
Yeah. The central authority ruler can dictate what goes on a coin. And exactly that. They travel, they change hands. People are going to have a chance to look at them. And there's no printing press, there's no newspaper or broadcast or anything. So, like, this is a way to get a message out. Interesting.
That reminds me a little bit of these we don't see them as much anymore, as you said. Coins have gone out of vogue. But, in my youth and certainly prior, the minting of a commemorative coin was often something you would see with respect to a historical event, even something as, it's important to me, but maybe not important to everyone. Like a Super Bowl victory, a team might issue a commemorative coin,
and they order them.
People
from the
would
back of your cereal box.
Exactly. Or from a TV commercial where you could send check or money order. And coins were a way of announcing that something glorious had happened.
Yeah. Exact. Coins were a way of announcing that something glorious has happened. It's a perfect way to now segue into what we're going to talk about, which is the Roman Judea Capta coins, which, if you couldn't already, figure out from your rudimentary Latin or how similar it sounds to, the English words, was about commemorating the capture of Judea.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Were these coins minted and circulated in Judea or in Rome or both?
Yeah, both. It started in Rome. The capture, really, it's the recapture of Judea. We've touched on this a number of times before, but the Jews were under Roman rule. They were, the very short version, right? They revolted. Their revolt was initially somewhat successful, and then it was very harshly put down with extreme Roman force. And the temple was destroyed. And like, the Romans really, it was an all-out war. They slaughtered thousands and thousands of people, took thousands and thousands of slaves. We talked about this in just last week's episode. They looted the temple, took the menorah out, celebrated, that looting. And
this was the second temple, just to
the second
clarify.
temple. Yeah.
So we've never really recovered from this.
The capture of Judea and the destruction of the temple is, I'd say, the most consequential event in Jewish history, certainly post-biblically, right? Like, this is like just a complete paradigm shift in what Jewish practice is, where the center of Judaism lies, like what Jews are, how they see themselves. This is a huge, major deal. And the Romans celebrated and commemorated that, in addition to the Arch of Titus, like we talked about last week, by, making some commemorative coins on the capture of Judea.
And were these coins used as currency, or were they?
Yeah. These are actual coins, which is a great way, like I said, to spread the message. And they change hands a lot, and people are going to see them. And this is the way that they're going to hear about this. And the preservation, also, it's not that interesting of a story, because we're not talking about discovering like 3 of them. There are thousands of them. Like, this isn't one object that we've uncovered. Like, this was the standard coin. Like, I guess the easiest way to think about it is like, remember state quarters? Remember
Yeah,
that, like when that started, when our parents were children, like that's just regular quarters. And now they're going to make them more interesting.
Got it.
Like that's what this was. The coins feature like exactly like coins now, which to me is so odd when you think about it. The coins had two sides. One side is called the obverse, and that features like the profile of a guy. Let's be honest, a guy, right? Almost always in history.
Heads. That's heads. That's not tails.
I was going to say the word that you're probably familiar with is heads and tails, but the fancy terms are obverse and reverse. But we could call them heads and tails. So the head is Vespasian in profile, and the reason that we do profiles on coins is I think it's much easier to make a flat representation of a person's head that way rather than facing forward. And then the tail side, and again, because there's a whole bunch of different versions of this, not like one coin, but would have something like the words Judea Capta, would have either the depiction of victory, which is like a specific woman in a Roman toga, I think with wings, or a Roman soldier and a palm tree, and often another woman who's supposed to be a Judean woman, like weeping under the palm tree, like just a clear symbology there of just like what it looks like when Romans conquer Judea. And now I think the big scholarly question about it is sort of just like, why? Why was this the thing that they would put on coins, the capture of Judea? Why was that important? So we've talked about this revolt, and I think to us, it's clear why this was an incredibly consequential event in Jewish history. Right.
But they had a whole empire. It's important to us because it's the end for us.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But they've got a whole world
Roman
to conquer.
Empire, and Judea is a tiny little corner of it, right? And this isn't even a new territory that they conquered. This is a tiny little corner of it, right, that has a revolt. There's like a relatively short war of a few years, and the revolt is put down. That's the thing you're going to make coins about? Like, seems a little strange. So the Roman background leading up here, that might be a little familiar to you just because, again, this has come up a few times. Vespasian is called after this revolt starts out somewhat favoring the Jews. Vespasian, this very serious military general, is called in to like take this seriously. Like, let's get real about this Jewish revolt, put it down. And he has real military experience. So he's called in by the Emperor Nero. Vespasian conquered Britain. Like, he was the Roman general who led the invasion of the British Isles, which I would say, like, that seems like a bigger deal. But he gets called in to do this. And in addition to his military expertise, another reason that Nero appoints him to the head of this to take care of the Jewish revolt is Vespasian is so, like, not a threat at all. Like, no one thinks Vespasian is going to be any sort of future important Roman politician in any way, except, as you might recall, friend of the show, Josephus, who records that he has this prophecy that Vespasian is the future Caesar.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's in the context of Vespasian defeating Josephus in battle in the Galilee, right?
Okay.
But Vespasian puts down this revolt. The emperor of Rome, Nero, dies. And then there's like a ton of tumult in Rome. It's called the Year of the Four Emperors. There's just like emperor after emperor. This person takes over. This person takes over. I think Nero either didn't have any heirs or like it wasn't clear who the next person would be. So it's up for grabs. Like who can be the next emperor? And Vespasian, who's loved by his troops, goes back to Rome and calls himself emperor. Like takes some of his troops with him, leaves his son Titus in charge of the Judean campaign, goes back to Rome, calls himself emperor, and becomes emperor that way. But where is he coming from? What's his claim to this title in any way? He's got to find a way to assert that. And he has he either thought of this on his own or he had just like an excellent first century media strategist working for him who's like, we got to come up with like a propaganda campaign to show people why you're a great emperor of Rome. Totally makes sense for you.
Interesting. He wants to publish a stele.
It's exactly like the Merneptah stele, what is his claim to fame? What has he done? How is he representing the glory of Rome?
Okay.
And he captured Judea, and it's captured, not recaptured, which is a deliberate choice, to kind of like frame this as like, wow, he conquered this new territory that again, already belonged to them.
It's great spin.
It is great spin. And he's also trying to, I don't know necessarily how much people were aware of it, but like he's trying to also cast himself as another version of a previous emperor, Augustus, from 100 years prior, who had captured Egypt for the first time, legitimately, and he did this Judea Capta coin series, and he did there was a whole Roman thing. You're allowed to have a triumph, which is like a specific type of parade, but it's only allowed when you conquer new territory. So they like find some very strange justifications for how they're going to have a triumph for the capture of Judea, even though, like, again, cannot emphasize this enough, they already had it.
So what did they put on these coins in order to articulate to the world that they had captured Judea?
So front of the coin, obverse, the head side is Vespasian's head, right? And that's like, he's the emperor. And then the back side, the reverse, is this, again, either a Roman soldier, which is like emphasizing Roman military power, or the symbol of victory itself, right? Like emphasizing the victory. This weeping Judean woman, right? Like showing that how like Romans can like put down any enemy. And the palm tree, which there's a really interesting article, we'll put it in the show notes, of just like sort of this scholarly question of, was the palm tree a symbol of Judea, or was the palm tree a symbol of Rome? Like, which is it, a symbol of Roman power, or is it a symbol of Rome having power over this thing?
Well, I guess if it's a symbol of Judea, then it's clear to me why it's chosen and how it announces to the people that we captured Judea. If it's a symbol of Rome, I'm not sure how it does that, but far be it for me to weigh in on this, because I'm learning about it now for the first time. But the weeping Judean woman, how do we know that she is a Judean woman and not just any overly emotional, hysterical female?
Oh, that's a good question.
Probably something else that someone's going to
Well, it says Judea Capta on it. Like if you...
Oh, it says the word?
Oh, sorry. And then it says the words, Judea, the same way that you would see like in God we trust or whatever. It says the words Judea Capta.
That is helpful. I was just envisioning this as we see a crying woman and we're supposed to know. Yeah,
if you were envisioning it as like, oh yeah, this is like a symbol and what's it supposed to mean? You're like, no, in big letters, Judea Capta.
Got it. Okay. That is really helpful.
And in a way that would be, like mostly readable to us, except this is a real niche, history nerds point, except there's no J for Judea. As you might recall from the source of all historical knowledge, I believe in Indiana Jones movie.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Dr. John Monson, but that would have been my second guess.
Right. I think it's Indiana Jones. Right, he has to like step on certain tile. I haven't seen it in a long time, but he has to step on certain tiles to spell out God's name. But there's no J in Latin; it's an I. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be thinking of a different movie, but it's Judea is spelled with an I at the beginning because there's no J in Latin.
Right, that makes sense.
So yeah, it's very clear. It's not like, oh, maybe this woman is a Jew. It's we beat the Jews. Coin. Let's take a break here, and then we will come back and talk more about Roman propaganda and why this was so important to Rome. During the break, I looked it up. I was exactly right with the Indiana Jones reference and the I. You can go rewatch Indiana Jones and the Search for the Holy Grail.
Never need an excuse. I'm going to be a obnoxious little human, say, I think you're referring to Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I don't think it's actually called Indiana Jones and the Search for the Holy Grail.
No, the third one.
The Last Crusade.
The third one called? The Last Crusade. Okay, I'm so sorry. You're right. But that's what it's called, The Last Crusade.
Yeah, all good. I was like, what movie is he talking about? I missed one.
So I remember a specific scene, but can't remember the title of the movie right now.
All good. All good.
Okay. So like we were saying before, obviously, the Roman recapture of Judea, the destruction of the temple, this is a hugely consequential event in Jewish history. But like, was it in Roman history? Like, what? Why is this an occasion for making coins? Why was this the thing that Vespasian made a parade about?
The only thing I could think of, and it seems totally anachronistic to Roman times, is, something we talk a lot about today is, like, if the Jews do it, then it's a big deal. Or if it involves the Jews, it's a big deal. Like, I am not minimizing or maximizing any Jewish action or Israeli political activity or whatever it is. But it seems like anything that the Jews do engenders more outcry, more news, more study than anybody else. But that seems very contemporary to me.
So that's exactly the direction I wanted to go, of just, why do you care about us so much? Why are we so important to you?
Like, we just want to be.
Scholars are kind of divided on this. Is it, like we were saying, like, there is this focus on the Jews who made up, like they do, like a very small percentage of the population of the Roman Empire, but loomed disproportionately large for whatever reason. It reminds me a little bit of like the Purim story, and Haman is like so bothered that Jews are so different than other people in the Persian Empire. There are so many people in the Persian Empire, but just like they stick out. They refuse to like, go along with the flow of what everyone else is doing. They seem like they continue to practice, their own customs. They're not really getting on board with the monoculture program. And therefore there's something that like really bothers people about them.
Right. They stick in your craw.
Yeah. And definitely mixed up in scholars who see it that way. It's not the main topic of what we're talking about here, but I feel like you can't talk about the Roman revolt and how large it has loomed in history without talking about the fact that the Romans executed, you might have heard of this story, the Romans executed a Jew, in addition to many other Jews, who turned out to later be of some historical importance.
Right. And maybe started a major world religion.
Right? But like scholars are really divided on this. Of like, was this a major movement at the time? Or was it relatively minor at the time and came to be major later? Like, were they executing lots and lots of people and Jesus was one of them? That's who we're talking about, by the way, Jesus.
Right. Right.
Or was it that like he did represent something incredibly like countercultural and really disturbing to the Romans?
My basic understanding is that from a Christian perspective, it doesn't really matter if it was the Jews who killed Jesus or the Romans who killed Jesus. There are other elements of what happens during that few-day period that are much more important to the underpinnings of Christian theology. So if it doesn't matter to the Christians, why does it matter so much to the Romans?
Right. So why does it, and I think like the questions are kind of connected, because I think there is maybe a branch of thought within Christians of saying like, hey, the capture of Judea was a big deal because the Romans did recognize something was going on there of some importance, But so there are two, I want to present the other side, because we've been presenting this, one side of just like, it was important because the Jews represented something different. The revolt was important. It wasn't a tax-based revolt. It wasn't just about independence. It was about religious freedom. Maybe there's like shades of the Maccabean revolt here. It's a rejection of like, it's not Hellenism anymore, but there's a rejection of Roman culture. The other side of looking at it is just like really bad timing. Vespasian needed to make a name for himself. He needed to like really cement his role as emperor. So he put down this revolt very harshly, had Titus put down the revolt very harshly, burned down the temple, which Josephus says happened by accident. Like huge asterisk there of like, I don't think we trust Josephus as a historically accurate source there, given that, side note, Vespasian and Titus are the Flavian dynasty. And like you can remember from our Josephus episode, that's what he changes his name to. Like he is Josephus Flavius. He's like in that dynasty, right? He's part of that court. So he's extremely beholden to them. But so that the Jewish revolt was just like, oh man, it was really bad timing because Vespasian was like looking to capitalize on some. And I think without getting too political, I think a comparison that can be drawn here is like Iraq, Saddam Hussein in 2003, for our listeners who remember the feeling at the time. But we want to emphasize American power. We want to show that we are strong. We want to show our military might. President Bush, mission accomplished thing, like standing under the mission accomplished banner because they defeated, Iraq, is like the Judea Capta thing reminded me a lot of that. Okay, like what mission did we accomplish here? Like recaptured a province that was in revolt, but it's a way for him, for Vespasian to stand on the deck of an aircraft carrier and say mission accomplished, so that he can be seen as the Roman emperor who's getting stuff done and bringing glory back to Rome.
It's imagery. This was the mass media of the time. This was the 24-hour cable news cycle of President Bush on an aircraft carrier being paraded in front of the world. These coins changing hands and making their way across trade routes from one merchant to another, from one family to another. everyone being reminded this is what Vespasian had accomplished.
Yeah, exactly. He's the conqueror of Judea. And like, let's gloss over the fact that, again, it had already been conquered. Like, this
but
is
again,
not new.
if that had not been amplified on another series
Mm-hmm.
of coins, then
Yeah.
maybe people don't really know and they don't
Right.
and it's like everything today. Everything is a clip, and what you see in that moment is what you absorb, or what what you take with you. And if this is what's being put on the coin, this is what people are going to remember. It doesn't matter if it was the first capture or the second capture. It was a capture.
Right. Like, people associate Vespasian with this like archetypical Judean woman under the palm tree, whatever it is that means. And this, thinking about these like two different ways of looking at it, like why was this important to Rome? Why was there a parade about this? Why were there coins about it? It's not really a historical question, but kind of an emotional one. Like, as a Jew in the 21st century, I felt conflicted about which one of these do I wish was the right answer? You know, like, is it that like the Jews are important and therefore it get a lot of negative attention, like kind of no matter what, or they were just like, it was very unfortunate timing, you know, and like they don't really loom as large. But before we end, I want to tell the last part of this story, which I think is so interesting. And
I'm so excited just based on the look on your face.
Yes. And connects to an idea we've touched on a couple times this season of this Jewish notion of taking as we've talked about symbols, as we've talked about objects, taking these symbols that are symbols of oppression and turning them into symbols of pride, of power, of of being the masters of our own destiny in some way. So fast forward many centuries, the state of Israel is founded. And in 1958, on the 10-year anniversary of the founding of the state of Israel, Israel issues these commemorative coins called the Israel Liberata series. And on one side of the coin... Yeah. And so I really encourage listeners, look at the show notes, click on the links for what these Judea Capta coins look at, and then please look at the pictures of these Israel Liberata coins, because hearing this story and seeing those coins and then seeing these new ones, like, wow, like fits into this idea of like, what story are we telling? What message are we spreading? It's a really, really good one. So the Israel Liberata coins, which say Israel Liberata in English and something Cherut Israel, like in Hebrew, on one side is a perfect facsimile of the Judea Capta coin with sort of just like this chain motif going around it. Like it is, showing the Judea Capta coin. And then, with a Roman soldier, palm tree in the middle, weeping woman on one side. And then on the other side, same palm tree in the middle, a woman holding up a baby, like not in a threatening way, like in a very proud, like a mother with a baby child, and like a very archetypal, like Israeli kibbutz settler with the like old style kibbutz hat planting a tree in the soil. And it's like, how do we take this how do we turn this symbol of Judea being captured, Judea being destroyed, into this like reflowering of it, this reclamation of Jewish identity? Like, it's 1900 years later, but like we are now free and we're breaking the chains of bondage. We're like showing the exact reverse of this image. Literally the reverse, because it's the reverse side of the coin, but
not the obverse.
Not the obverse. Yeah.
The obverse is the Israel Liberata.
I'm not sure which is the obverse and which is the reverse, actually. That's why you got to put a face on one side.
Liberata is a choice. It's the word liberata, it's a real poke at people who have been dead for thousands of years.
Right. At Titus, who's not around to see it. But it reminds me a lot of what we talked about, the menorah, and like sort of just like a real emphasis on like the, changing this symbol in the Arch of Titus. And like Titus is not around to see, like this is only important to us.
Right. But this is me really putting political aspirations aside. But this is our reclamation, our retaking of the notion of autonomy. We lost our autonomy to the Romans. And we literally had to use currency that said Judea Capta on it. And now we have the opportunity to take that back.
Yeah.
And it's like what you said, it's the Magen David, it's the menorah. It's using the Arch of Titus menorah as our seal, as opposed to the temple menorah. It's taking the yellow star and turning it into the centerpiece of our flag.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are all the parallels I was thinking of, like, as we think through this season.
I now understand your excitement about getting to this point in the episode, because I think for me, it sheds so much light on why this is important. Jewish History Nerds is a production of Unpacked, an OpenDor Media brand. Subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast and follow Unpacked on all the regular social media channels. Just search for @UnpackedMedia.
And if you're enjoying nerding out with us, please share this and other episodes with your friends and family. And most of all, be in touch with us by writing to us at nerds@unpacked.media. That's nerds@unpacked.media.
Jewish History Nerds is produced by Jenny Falcon and Rifki Stern. Dr. Henry Abramson is our education lead. It's edited by Rob Pera. I'm Yael Steiner.
And I'm Jonathan Schwab. Thanks for listening.